None. Our next registrant wishing to speak in opposition is Nino Amato.
Thank you, and hopefully I can provide you some information that will make your decision more data-driven. I live on the west side, grew up in the Green Bush, South Madison, and but I worked for 12 years in the industrial park that we're discussing. Our facility, Coalition Wisconsin Aging and Health Groups.
You handled those pinheads.
Kim, can you mute yourself, please?
They were trying to back you into a corner and it.
Kim? If you would please mute yourself. Okay, thank you.
Should I start all over?
Go ahead.
For the last 12 years, I was president, CEO for the Coalition Wisconsin Aging and Health Groups. It's the oldest legislative and legal advocacy group in the state. It basically protects the rights of the elderly, people with disabilities, and also homelessness, because the biggest segment of society that's falling into homelessness are our elderly who are on fixed income. When I was there in, 2009, 10, 11, and 12, the police department, the drug narcotic squad, would use our parking lot, which are sheltered with bushes, and an officer would be up on the roof with night goggles, because industrial parks at night are the absolute best opportunities for drug transactions, especially Stoughton Road and Dairy Drive. They come up from Rockford, they come from Milwaukee, they come from Chicago. It happens all the time. When they proposed the homeless encampment on Dairy Drive, the police department and the fire department said absolutely not. And here's the reasons why. You asked the question, does it harm businesses? You bet. Businesses having to invest in locks, cameras, and I'm going to read the complaints that have occurred on Dairy Drive alone and Aberg. But let me start with Aberg. Aberg had over 200 police calls between January 2021 and December 2023 for battery, civil disputes, deaths investigation, at least 5, drug overdose, domestic disturbance, noise complaints, theft, robbery, and weapons offenses. But it gets worse. Dairy Drive had over 233 police calls during a shorter period of time that include arson. One of the residents burned the hut down and stabbed another resident. Battery, burglary, property, burglary and theft, fights, armed robbery, weapons offensive, and to make things worse, the police were just there most recently to serve a summons to arrest someone, and Brenda Conklin's organization, Mach 1 Health, which is the same as Occupied Madison, with the same people, wouldn't let them in. Let's talk about the results of Dairy Drive. And to the credit of Barbara McKinney, put this on an executive committee to close that encampment down. And I and others have been saying it has been a disaster for the last 3 years. They put people in an 8 feet by 8 foot hut. No bathroom, no running water. The bathrooms are at least 50 yards down the way. The huts cost $15,000 each, and they were shipped in from Southern California and weren't made for our temperature. So what's the results of Dairy Drive? 25% of the residents passed away or went to prison. Think of that, 25%. Let's talk about the contract you have. The contract clearly states that Occupy Madison cannot impose sobriety test requirements for residents to seek health and mental health services, et cetera, et cetera.
You have 1 minute remaining.
That's ridiculous. The 990, Occupied Madison had their tax exempt status turned away. Brenda will tell you it's because we couldn't find a CPA. There were CPAs that didn't want to touch their books because you have to certify. They're now working with Wagner to try to get a certification. They're behind on their 990s for 2023 and 2024, and Brenda Conklin has received $1.5 million and a salary of $102,000, and one of her consultants work 2 hours a week at about $640 an hour. Read the document I put out in front of you. We all took an oath from the Constitution. I teach criminal justice. To abide by the laws. This is a direct violation of the basically federal criminal code that was used back in the 80s, 90s, and the turn of the century for crack houses. This is not a crack house, but if you have a consistent pattern of drug use, you are committing a crime. And let me add one thing.
Your time is up, sir.
I'll be happy to answer questions.